thank you very much for your introduction, and thank you, Alumni Board, for selecting me for this distinguished award. I feel very honored to be here and to receive this. We were very fortunate to hear from Mark Perello today. I think he brought some excellent information forward, and he gave us a very understandable and with his personal experiences, a very important way of looking at disability in our society. I was particularly taken with your idea of jumping off a 60-foot cliff. Maybe it's a good thing that depth perception was not difficult for you, because I myself have a real bridge phobia. I will scuba dive 100 feet down, but don't let me see a bridge. Anyway, one of the things that the takeaway from this morning's conference is everybody is important in our society. Value is not just for certain people, it's for everyone. And I think that's one of the highlights and one of the ways that social work is unique in looking at people. And I have always valued my education, my profession, because we don't just look at one piece of the person. We're not looking at just the body, we're not looking at just the mind, we're not looking at just the psyche, but we're including all parts, the environment, the person, the family, society, culture. We can do the laundry list, but I think we all know that social work is a very, very special profession, and I'm very proud to say when I'm asked, what are you, or what do you do? And I say, I'm a social worker. So anyway, a couple of days before I received the call about being the recipient of this award, I had been asked by my counseling agency to send a fax of my BC diploma to Blue Cross and Blue Shield for credentialing. Some of you might know about this. I joked with my boss and said that because the BC diploma was supersized, it couldn't be faxed. You know, they're big. You seen them? Okay, all right. Okay, so we could fax it in pieces, but I also had to let them know that it was also in Latin, okay? After some discussion with the powers that be at Blue Cross and Blue Shield, it was determined that I could email a picture. I thought that was a reasonable alternative. Okay, I had actually framed my diploma after I had received it. And because I had redone my office a couple of years ago, I had put it in the attic for safekeeping. So anyway, knowing that I needed to take this picture, I went up to the attic to find the diploma. Several days later, and after 3 trips to the dump, I still hadn't found it. Okay. So it was more than just a quest to find the diploma. It then became a quest because I want it. I earned it, I have it, I owned it, it's mine, where is it? Okay, my husband, who's sitting in the front seat there, said, you must have left it somewhere. I said, no, I wouldn't do that. So anyway, finally I was exhausted. I had looked and looked and looked. I mean, in my attic I have to crawl around. So anyway, I was kind of filthy, and I was on the stairs, and I said, I know what I need to do. I said, St. Anthony, please, why have you abandoned me on this? I need my diploma. So I crawled up the stairs to the attic, and I made one more tour and finally opened another box. And there was my diploma, okay? Not only was my diploma there, but my Suffolk diploma was there, and my husband's boot, his winter boot that he hadn't seen in 2 years. So I got a bonsai. Anyway, now I know that I did indeed graduate from Boston College. I have the diploma to prove it, and I have a cleaner attic. And I thank St. Anthony. Okay, as a professional social workers, we build on our education and our experiences as well as learning from mentors. And there are many, many mentors in all our lives, and I'd just like to talk about a couple of people who've been particularly helpful to me in my life. First, I want to start with my husband, who has been, we've been married for 43 years. And he has been by my side. He has supported me through all my educational adventures that I'll tell you a little bit more about. He has been there through thick and thin, and he's a wonderful support in my life, so I want to recognize him. And of course, I have to include my son, okay, who put me through the traces when he was an adolescent. And I am so proud that I have successfully launched him. He now lives on his own by himself in Boston. So those are the two people that have been so supportive of me through my environment. But in terms of my education, I want to say my first and foremost mentor was a man by the name of Dr. John Sullivan. He was my first social work professor at Suffolk University. And as dewy-eyed young students, we wanted to change the world. I mean, these were the times when Saul Alinsky, are you familiar with him? Reveille for Radicals, okay. I mean, yeah, okay. We thought we could change the world. And he sort of helped us bring us down to reality and say, you know, not always can we change the situation for our clients. So what do we have left? And our role is sometimes to help people use their strengths to make the necessary changes, to adapt with resiliency, and to cope with life challenges. So that's one of the things that always stuck with me, that if I can't change something, I can't sometimes make somebody walk, but what can I do to make it better? And that was one of the things that he brought forth. Larry Rhines and Pat McDermott, who mentored me in my fledgling years as a college professor at Quincy College. They always had wise and supportive counsel and encouraged me in the academic endeavors that I had that were so meaningful to me. Ed Alessi, another inspirational mentor whose tireless efforts and work made the foundations of the Nursing Home Committee, shared interest group, that's what they want to call it now, strong beyond his direct leadership. And somebody who is here today to help support me again is Toby Savitt, and whose wise and sage advice and calm manner, quiet support has provided the essential threads for the Nursing Home Committee and for me. Not to be discounted are all the other wonderful individuals who I've met through my career and practice. These individuals have taught me about life and their uniqueness and wisdom. For example, there was an older woman who had a recent admission to a nursing home that I was talking to. And despite her own physical and emotional challenges of that particular day, and that was her first day, she said, "It's not so much to be nice." Many others have demonstrated strength, spirit, and ingenuity that have equally made lasting impressions on me. Looking back, my career was also in many ways shaped by my early experiences. I grew up living in a number of different states. I started off in New Jersey, lived in New York, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Connecticut, all before I graduated from high school. I spent summers with my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my great-great-aunt in Ohio. These independent working women lived together and were role models for me. I loved hearing their life stories. My great-aunt was a bank teller. My grandmother was an English teacher. They shared the family history, the French-Russian side of the family, and the elusive Native American relative. I heard about the challenges of the Depression era and pored through old tintype pictures of distant relatives. It was through these experiences that I developed an intense appreciation for oral histories and reminiscence and resiliency. One of my early jobs was working for the Connecticut State Welfare Department. I managed the Title 19 program. You probably know it as Medicaid, but it's also Title 19. We called it that. It was easier. People didn't get mixed up between Medicare and Medicaid. This was in the Bristol office. And I learned at that point in time, very early on, about the financial suffering and the trials and tribulations that illness and disability can bring. As a young worker, I often felt frustrated that there weren't enough resources for people, that programs like Medicaid just weren't adequate for helping people who were struggling with medical debt and illness. My quest throughout my career in life has been to make the world a bit better for having been in it. And I believe that formal education is the best way, was the best way, and is, for me to do that. After completing my undergraduate work at Suffolk University, I felt the need to continue my education, and thus I applied at BC. I wanted to learn more about the psychodynamics of individuals, how to help people more effectively. Memorable in my experience at BC were the courses in psychopathology, medical social work, and of course social welfare systems with Dr. Dimitri Iotrides. The social welfare system course was reputed to be one of the toughest at BC. Some of you might remember. Dr. Iotrides was always insistent that we think outside the box. He pushed us to consider points of view that were not easily understandable, at least to me. They weren't accessible or convenient. His methods seemed often obscure, in that they never provided us answers. He just simply demanded that we answer more questions. He dragged us, often protesting, to think about our ethnocentrism, particularly in the political systems arena. I'm not sure I ever got it right, but I've tried to utilize his perspective. As a footnote, I was also fortunate enough to participate in one of his many trips to the PRC. It was a trip of a lifetime. My graduation from BC was followed by a number of work choices, and my passion for helping older adults was always at the forefront. I was the first social worker in the private nonprofit Quincy Point Congregational Church Homes in Quincy. This is an enormous place. It had 643 apartments, and it also had a senior center with 750 members. I developed social work in keeping with what I had learned at Boston College. I developed a support group for spouses who were caring for their an ill spouse. It was one of the first. That was back in it was just about the time I graduated, 1980. I also learned the value of the entrepreneurial spirit. The executive director approached me one day and said he wanted to start a breakfast program. We already served lunch and dinner at the complex. And I agreed that this would be a good idea, breakfast, okay? But before we start any kind of a program, you want to find out if the people wanted it. A needs assessment, right? Okay, that's what you're taught to do. Okay, so I said we needed to do a survey. Must have been one of my first thoughts. So we did the survey, we gathered all the information, and guess what? Nobody wanted it, okay? Well, he was an innovative man, and he said, let's just do it. Well, guess what happened? They all came. So much for my needs assessment, right? Not only did they come, but it was the most profitable meal program that we had. It basically subsidized the others, and even though we were nonprofit, you still had to, make ends meet. So what was my takeaway? Often people don't know and don't know how to express what they need or want. And sometimes it's important just to try things. So I learned that as well. After 9 years with housing, I embarked on several other career paths. I worked as a consultant at nursing homes and helped provide professional social work resources to the staff there. I also had a job at Quincy College, which I mentioned a little earlier, and developed a seamless transfer program to the BSW programs in the area. I taught gerontology for nurses in order to better prepare them for work with older adults, and developed the GBH telecourses, which are sort of the precursors, or were the precursors to online courses. In 1998, I lost my full-time teaching job at Quincy College. They were going through financial cutbacks, and I was one of the 22 people that got riffed. I was devastated by the experience. My work at the college had been particularly satisfying and rewarding. However, one moves on and finds alternative paths. I turned to my nursing home consulting once again, and you have to say, why nursing homes? My interest in nursing home social work follows the primary tenets of professional social work. It is to help the vulnerable and the poor. Nursing home residents have been often forgotten and have been a forgotten population, particularly in social work. I found that many professional social workers and even academicians hold myths associated with nursing homes and nursing home residents and the social work provided there. As a result, the following spring, I published my first book, which was a primer for nursing home social workers, in order to provide the profession with a standard and substantial resource and reference. The following spring, Springer Publishing Company of New York agreed to publish the book under a title of Guide for Nursing Home Social Workers in 2000. This book was revised this past spring, and the second edition was published this past July 2012 with many timely revisions. I checked to find out how many copies they've sold, because you're always curious as an author. And they have sold 280 copies since July. So watch out, Stephen King. I'm coming. During the ensuing years following my first published book, my career path continued to take many turns. I have served as full and part-time faculty at several other colleges. I've worked for the visiting nurses, clinical counseling, written online courses at BU, and I've continued the consulting in nursing homes. I've also served, and I really have to say with much pleasure, as the chair of the Nursing Home Committee for the past several years. Early in my membership, as Jackie described, I developed annual topical surveys of conference attendees. Over a 10-year period of time, we were able to gather good qualitative information about the practice of social work in nursing homes by social workers. The dissemination of the survey information led to social workers having greater confidence in determining their roles, because oftentimes in the past, in order to justify the roles, some social workers were actually said, well, you can do the bookkeeping and then we can kind of have you do the social work on the side. So it was very interesting how this, some of the surveys helped to promote good social work in the facilities. It also was helpful in negotiating better salaries for social workers by making salaries public. We are launching our first online survey through NASW this January. We are hoping to determine how best the committee/shared interest group can help those in the field. As a chair, I love to tell people this is an exciting, innovative group. We have produced 3 published authors. Not 1, not 2, but 3, okay? And we also have a member who created for the group an award-winning video on certified nursing assistants. I'm always proud to say that I belong to this group. My most recent journey has been into the PhD land at Simmons College, School of Social Work. It's been another chapter in my growth continuum. I'm almost at the defense. I keep saying that. My advisor, Abby Frost, has been very supportive of my unique interest in nursing home social work. My particular interest has been the process of transitioning individuals in nursing homes back to the community. Unlike hospitals where everyone is discharged, nursing homes, the nursing home setting, is a balance between long-term care and short-term care. Although people have always moved in and out of nursing facilities, the acceleration of transition between care modalities has continued to increase over time. Shorter hospital stays have matriculated into shorter nursing home stays. As the average nursing home can easily replace its population within a year with 20 to 30 discharges a month. And most people think you go in and you don't come out. Not true. Policies and monies to support individuals in the community have been developed to enhance home care supports and minimize institutionalization. At the same time, discharge and transition back to the community can frequently be a complex dance of garnering enough quality services, establishing program eligibility, developing and supporting family commitments, and preparing the individual for their independence. For example, in one facility, I worked with a 65-year-old single childless woman who had a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. A proud woman, she shared with me that she had struggled with declining abilities over a 25-year period of time. She managed with few resources to stay in her apartment alone. However, the MS had progressed to the point where she could no longer transfer from the bed to chair independently. She could no longer manage her own finances or even maneuver a wheelchair effectively. Yet her fondest desire was to return to her beloved apartment, and she was adamant over a 6-month period of time this was the only choice that we recognized. I worked diligently with the transitions counselor to discover any available community resources that would allow her to achieve her wish. However, her care needs simply exceeded the community resources. Finally, after many efforts, her options were narrowed to remaining in the facility or going and accepting a congregate site. As we talked more about her choices, she shared with me that she had been able to give up driving when it was no longer safe. She had retired from her job when her ability to complete tasks was no longer possible. Together, we looked at these challenges and her abilities. She was a survivor. She had survived through incredible strength and courage. At one point during our discussion about ongoing congregate sites, she said with a smile, "I know I will somehow manage. I just don't like it." She made the decision to go to a congregate site in the town that was close by her former apartment and friends. In this way, through all our efforts, we had arrived at a balance, a community place that would serve her care needs and one that was acceptable to her. As a result of many similar situations, I was intrigued about how much effort and knowledge was involved in negotiating discharges from nursing homes. I looked at the literature and the study about nursing homes and discharge planning. Very little has been written. In fact, all transitional care models that are presently used are addressed for hospitals, not nursing homes. As a result of my reading and research, I was determined to learn more about how nursing home social workers across the country were addressing these discharge needs and what training they needed. As the results of my study, I found that while many understood the mental health needs and issues connected with discharge planning, other areas such as expanding and changing community resources, medical illnesses, and external and internal communication were lacking, and the social workers wanted training in these areas. I'm not sure where I will be headed in the upcoming years. There are always many choices and many paths that can be followed. One thing I am sure, however, I will always value my education, the support of my colleagues, and the experiences that I've had with individuals in my clinical practice. It's these qualities that will help me define yet further my goals and accomplishments. I thank you very much.